Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Sunday service. I'm very happy to be here with you all. My name is Latika, and I'm happy to share offering Sunday service to you with Nayaswami Nitai. I'd like to read to you now from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. This week's topic is, Does God hide the truth? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In last week's reading, we saw that the great masters themselves counseled discretion in the dissemination of truth. The counter-argument is sometimes made, but the Lord doesn't hide. He reveals His beauty in the sunsets, His tender sympathy in the rain, His wrath in the thunder, His restless energy in the brooks, His power in the sunlight. There are exoteric truths, and there are also esoteric truths. There is that which is revealed impersonally and left up to us to interpret, such as the thunder and our perception of it as divine wrath, the rain and our perception of it as God's sympathy. But behind even God's most open expressions there lies impenetrable mystery. The wind blows where it wills, said Jesus in chapter 3 of the Gospel of St. John. You hear the sound of it, but you do not know where it comes from or where it is going. So is everyone who is born of the Spirit. And Sri Krishna says in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, By me the whole vast universe of things is spread abroad. By me, the unmanifest. In me are all existences contained, not I in them. God's hidden reality cannot be understood by the reasoning faculty. India's Sankhya philosophy states frankly, Ishwar Ashida, God is not provable. A willingness to seek the underlying reality behind appearances is essential for those who would know God. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Good morning again. We'll start the talk with a reading from Whispers from Eternity. O Divine Teacher, train me to recognize the difference between my soul's lasting happiness and the passing pleasures of the senses. Keep my eyes open, that I be not deceived by my senses, decked out as they are in stolen royal trappings, and the mirage cloak of false happiness, as thus disguised they try to enter the mansion of my life. Discipline my unwise, wayward senses, that my pleasures be spiritualized, and that I look ever beyond the illusion of glittering, visible forms, to find divine joy hidden, simply dressed in the white robe of humility. So this morning's topic is about, is God hidden? And I think it makes a difference in what your upbringing was like. And almost all of us were raised in the West, and so the answer is resoundingly yes. God was hidden very, very carefully and completely. Last week was a kind of a break in my schedule, and I was down at my mom's house in Sacramento celebrating her 86th birthday. And it was a chance to revisit what life is like in kind of more normal society than in a cooperative spiritual community. I'm blessed here. I am surrounded by other devotees. There's a temple about 50 steps from where I live. My little place I live in doesn't have a TV. It doesn't have a newspaper. I do have access to the internet in my office, but it's real different. And going back into the city and seeing, oh yeah, I remember this. The newspaper lands in the front door at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the TV sets on a lot during the day, and you could go a long time without ever thinking about God. Or maybe if you're lucky, you have somebody on Sunday morning that mentions God a little bit. Maybe not. You probably were educated in a school system that gave you every indication that it was completely possible, and never even to think about, that you could live your life without God, that you could get your Master of Business Administration, or you could do all the kinds of things that life is all about and never even think about God. You probably had if you did have a religion in your life, you probably had a religion that had been completely co-opted by the sensory domain, and that everything that you ever heard about was just kind of, crammed in this little sensory world that we take as reality. And of course, if you're here this morning, it wasn't enough. You realize that something horribly was missing. It's in India, they have the term Maya, which is a fascinating term. It took me a long time to come to terms with, because it's so foreign to the United States. The United States, Maya? What's Maya? The world is real simple. It's just right out there in the senses, and you just take it for granted and you live it. Problem is that we are in a very handicapped situation. We don't realize it unless you start to look around at how things are not working so well outwardly in that sensory environment. I knew I was giving Sunday service coming up, so while I was home, I was thinking, I wonder what's going to happen this week in the world. And I kind of thought, last Sunday there had been no debt ceiling agreement, and I thought, well, maybe I'll be talking about total financial collapse in the United States. And well, of course, it didn't happen. Monday they put together a compromise that nobody seems to be happy with, and so what happened? Well, a couple days later, the stock market still collapses. It falls 500 points in one day, the most it's fallen since the last big recession. It was other little things happening where, the European currency situation is in bad straits. It seems like every week another country is added to the list of potential defaults happening. To make it just, add a little more spice to it, I happened to read an article in the National Geographic about that there's this big surge of sunspots, bigger than they've ever had in history, that's blasting out into space in all directions, and maybe one will hit us. We don't know. I was thinking, if you thought about the world right now as a human, as a person, it'd be somebody who, on Monday you thought they had a very bad heart condition, but the heart condition kind of cleared up on Monday, but then the lungs collapsed on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday you found they had total paralysis of the lower limbs. I mean, if somebody was like that, you would say, they're in bad shape. We'd put them in the intensive care unit and try to start putting them on the prayer list. I mean, it's real tenuous out there, real fragile right now. It does look like something very difficult is going to happen, which for devotees, it's just simply another opportunity. It's an opportunity to say, yeah, something's missing here. Something's wrong. This world, it's not functioning very cohesively. And that's where this whole aspect of Maya comes in. I thought I'd read a little bit from the Bhagavad Gita, one of my very, very favorite books. But this is smaller type, so I need my glasses. This is from the second chapter, just kind of a few verses. When the yogi, like a tortoise, withdrawing its heads and limbs into its shell, is able to withdraw his energy from the objects of sense perception, he becomes established in wisdom. The man who merely abstains from sense enjoyments may forget them for a time, but the taste for them will linger, That person, however, who beholds the Supreme Spirit loses the taste for anything but the infinite. He who, having subjugated his senses, becomes united with me, remains engrossed in the infinite self, knowing it as the supremely relishable. Only mastery of the senses can bestow the steadfastness of true wisdom. The man of perfect self-control is able to act in this world unaffected by it, inwardly free from attraction and repulsion. He has attained unshakable inner calmness. Those with unsettled consciousness have no discrimination. Those who are unmeditative cannot know peace. And for those who lack peace, how is happiness possible? Therefore, Arjuna, withdraw your sense faculties from the senses themselves and from sense objects. Thus will your wisdom become firmly established. You can see in all these quotes that the senses play a big role. In the West, they define our reality, but if you bring in the concept of Maya, they're the very things that contract us, constrict us, keep us terribly handicapped in really being able to function in life in any kind of a positive way. It's all around us, of course. Everything, right now, you look out, you got this voice coming over the loudspeaker, you have this vision happening, taste, touch, all these different things. And it gives you a very big picture. But it's a little bit, for us, it's like we were born into a movie theater. And when we woke up for the first time, all we saw was that screen in front of us. And it just kept rolling out feature after feature, year after year. And we just sat there in our seats thinking that's what life was all about. And then somebody poked us in the elbow and said, "Hey, want to go in the lobby for some treats?" or something. We shook our head and we said, "You mean there's more? There's more than this movie that we're watching?" And of course, that's the guru. He's saying, come on, there's more to this. There's more to explore. And, maybe we're saying, wait, don't bother me now. I want to see how this ends. And so, we let you watch that movie. And then, of course, before you can get up and leave, the next movie comes on, and then you're caught again. And it just keeps going on and on and on. But sooner or later, thanks to the way that creation was made, sooner or later we start to get tired of that. We start to see that that's not going to make it for us. It's simply, no matter how many romances we watch, it's not going to satisfy us. No matter how many fortunes are made, it's not going to satisfy us. And no matter how many health issues come up, it's just part of the movies. It's just part of the movie. There's a certain level of script making that everybody tunes into and produces, like watching, those sitcoms. They basically all have the same plot. They just have different, happens in a doctor's office, or it happens in a courtroom, or it happens in a computer bank or something. It's the same things going on. So after a while, and sometimes a long while, we get a little tired of it. We kind of say, there's got to be something else. Well, I think that's not so hard in the East, because there's a tradition. There's a tradition, especially in India, that these teachings of something beyond the senses consists of reality. And you might hear it in stories when you're growing up, Mahabharata, Ramayana. You might, see people or hear about people who are, monks practicing, or sadhus, or you might hear about meditation. Anyway, it may not be practiced so much at this current point in history, but the tradition is there, and the vibrations are there to tune into. In the West, that's not true. In the West, you really have to do some deep searching to get your way out of the theater. It's like nobody else is thinking about that. Everybody else that everybody you grew up with, your parents, everybody is thinking that that's what life is all about. Just trying to get the right movie. Try to get the right movie and just tune into it, and that's it. So you probably have to go through a little stage where you think you're a little crazy. You're a little different from everybody else because nobody else seems that concerned about how things are going. And then you find out that the yugas are working, if you're familiar with that. Consciousness is rising on the planet. There has been a shift of energy, moving those teachings out of the East to come to the West. It has happened over the last 100 years. and that they are now they're now here. They are, these deeper truths are now available to us in the West, but it's still kind of a beachhead experience. It's just, you can't turn on the 6 o'clock news yet and hear somebody talking about Dharma or blessings, even anything. So what Yogananda has outlined for all of us is the idea that you've got to come together. You've got to create a little vortex of energy to keep all those other messages at bay. Because if you only listen to the 6 o'clock news and you only read the newspapers, it's real hard to keep remembering God because you don't get any reinforcement. So you want other people around you. You want to look for satsang. You want to look for some way you can spend at least part of your week getting input that, keep looking, keep trying to explore this world beyond the senses. Keep trying to learn how to control the senses. Controlling the senses, that's a very unpopular term in the West right now. The whole idea is to indulge the senses, right? So all of a sudden we're starting to try to control them. Not an easy challenge. Some of us have been working at it, several decades now. And again, part of it's hard because you're in a pioneer state and you don't see, for the people who came to Ananda, we only had one role model. we had Swami to look to as somebody who had made a little progress in that direction, and to kind of link into that and try to see how's he doing it? Is that really possible? And then of course, but now there people have been trying for a longer. So there's a little beachhead here. There's a little beachhead at Ananda Village. There's a little beachhead at other places around the West where this higher consciousness is getting more and more established, so that you can have schools. You could have imagine schools where your teachers encouraged you to control your senses, to encourage you to try to learn to meditate, to look more deeply, to develop that awareness of that part of your personality, that part of beyond personality, that part of yourself. What a great head start you'd have in life. What a great way to help usher in this next wave of consciousness. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's just kind of, we're trying to create avenues for it to happen here more and more. So we want to stay focused on that's one of our primary missions in being down here, is to help expand consciousness on the planet beyond the senses, to people to see that there's another way of knowing. Now, what is that way? Intuition is one way. We have these little hints in the West. We have intuition, women's intuition. That's about the only way I ever heard about intuition when I was growing up. How about conscience? Anybody remember the story of Pinocchio? That was one of my rare introductions to the idea of conscience when I was growing up. If you don't remember the story, Pinocchio, every time he lies, his nose gets longer. And in a very graphic way, it gets the message across to younger people maybe. But they are little hints that there is this other intuitive side to life that we can cultivate. And then of course we have, after you get in, after you listen to the guru a little bit, listen to these teachings, you find out there's a whole panorama of ways to cultivate this consciousness. There's the idea of spending time alone. In Western culture, if you want to spend time alone, you're looked on as a little strange, that it's just not normal. Why don't you want to be there partying all the time? Why don't you want to be there, slapping each other on the back and cheering each other on, that good guy kind of atmosphere? Well, it's in that staying alone, that alone time gives you a chance to step outside the senses. Because if people are yelling in your ear all the time and slapping you on the back, it's real hard to step out of the senses. It doesn't work so easily. But so you find, oh my gosh, this is a good practice to find time alone. Time in silence. I did hear about silence a little bit because I knew a little bit about Gandhi when I was growing up. And I did know that for some reason Gandhi decided to spend at least a morning or a day in silence. I forget which it was. But it seemed very unusual. My gosh, why would somebody do that? But then you find out, my gosh, what a great way to cultivate this inner sense by silence. Then obviously meditation, which we talk about all the time, practicing those techniques and spending more time on it. We had a great experience this last winter. I live up at the meditation retreat, which also functions as a college and also as a base for our little monastery. And there's just a few monks, and you can get a little cocky because you kind of think, well, we got all this time to meditate. We're doing pretty well. You guys are kind of, okay, we're doing 2.5, 3 hours a day. That's pretty good. And then this one lady came in to join the college for a few months. And she came, and the next day, I didn't know who she was or nothing. But next morning, I noticed that somebody's already been in the temple by the time I got there. And the day after that, that same person is in the temple. She's getting up every morning. She's in the temple by 4 o'clock in the morning, every morning, the whole time she was here. It was like, oh my gosh. You mean there's more. We could push a little more. You could push more. And of course, you read the stories in the autobiography about these people meditating 16, 18, 20 hours a day. But those you kind of, put it. That's not us. But it should be. We should see those things, that we can do more. And that's, again, how are we going to cultivate this other consciousness if we're never spending a significant amount of time meditating? If we talk for 10 hours a day and meditate for 2 hours a day, what do you think wins? What do you think is getting built up? We have to shift the dynamics so that we really, really do start to make inroads in this deeper kind of experiencing life. It's why you have spiritual community in whatever shape you can do it. If you can live in full time in a community, it's one of the greatest blessings on the planet, aside maybe from finding a guru that you can relate to and that can work with you. If you can't have that, then you found a center in Torrance or something like that to create some energy, or you find a meditation group, or you find one other person in your life who at least can talk to you, can talk to God about once in a while. You do whatever you can to cultivate it, because it's really, really hard to do it on your own. It's really difficult if you're cut off from everybody else, although it's of course possible. It's possible because the greatest gift we can have is a guru. Now, again, guru is a foreign term in the United States. At least it certainly was 50 years ago. Less so now, but understanding it's still difficult, because in the West we have a lot of issues around authority, power, ego, all those things that get flared up when people start talking about gurus. But when you start to work with the concept of guru, and you really start to tune in to what is the guru? Well, the guru is simply the embodiment in human form of the consciousness that you're trying to awaken to in yourself. It's simply the proof that this process can work. It may be difficult. It may take many more years than you were thinking about when you signed on in the beginning. But the guru is the proof that it does work inexorably as you continue with perseverance on your path. And what is it that works? The guru just simply becomes one in that consciousness moment to moment. So there's no struggle anymore between the ego. And that kind of consciousness shouldn't be scary to us. That kind of consciousness should be cause for running at full speed to embrace it. And we start to realize that not only is it that high state of consciousness, but that high state of consciousness has a personal element to it, and that it's personally concerned about us individually in our own state of relative ignorance. And that the guru is truly the best friend we could ever hope to have. It's simply that it doesn't manifest, if you will, in the five senses all the time. Sometimes people have the karma that they have their guru functioning in the sensory world. People drawn to Yogananda at this point, that's not true. He's not in the sensory world, but does not mean he's not present and alive. He's more alive. He said more with us after he was able to let go of the body than before. Of course, we have to cultivate that. We have to. What is that? How do we get that? Well, how do you do it? Well, it's not difficult. Jesus has this great line. He says, ask and you shall receive. Knock and the door will be open. It's the only thing that's missing is our request, our asking. Now, a lot of the time we kind of float through life and we think, I got it pretty well made. I don't really need my guru today. Maybe next week I might need him a little bit, but I'm getting along pretty well right now. And then, of course, we find out sooner or later that doesn't really work very well. The deeper you go in the path, the less it works. Maybe in the beginning you can go, one week, week to week, thinking about the guru on Sundays or something. But eventually it gets to the point that you don't want to go a day without the guru, or you don't want to go an hour without the guru, or you don't want to go a minute or a second. You want to be in that continuous flow so that everything you do, you're sensing that presence and that subtle guidance and flow. In the Gita readings, it talks about how confusing and distracting the senses are, because if we're absorbed in the senses, we miss all the cues about how to live our lives. We're just thinking about the outward part. And this quiet voice within that's mentioned in all scriptures, it is there, but it does take cultivation to learn to listen to it. And that's where the yearning, the devotion comes into it. We have to it's valuing that presence, seeing it how it works. So first maybe it's in desperation in the beginning. You're like, people, they're drowning off the coast and they say a prayer that, God, if you save me, I'll believe in you. And then, you're saved and then things get better and you go on. But, it can get smaller. You can just moment to moment, issues come up in life, challenges come up in life. And if you train yourself to always look and ask for God and Guru's guidance, say, what should I be doing now? How should I be living my life? It's tuning into a flow of energy that is perceivable, but not through the senses. It's perceivable, though, as a flow of peace and calmness within, sometimes power. It's an energy flow that we can make friends with and cultivate on a moment-to-moment basis in our lives. The more we do that, the simpler life gets, and the less confusing it gets, the less fear-producing. You could get, going back to the beginning, you can look at the newspaper this week and get pretty afraid about, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to the financial system on the planet? It's a big problem. If your treasure is in the senses, it's going to be an overwhelming problem because you don't have any place else to go, because that whole scenario could get vastly changed in a very short period of time. I don't think it's going to happen overnight right now, but I do feel like these are continuing waves, and the waves are getting bigger each time, and it's just a matter of time before we do reach a overwhelming state. But if you have this other part of you activated, if you have your soul sense of communion activated, it's okay. It's okay because you're just there to be an instrument to help in whatever way you can. You might have a big role. You might have the karma of President Obama. You might have a small role where there's really not a whole lot you can possibly do to affect the financial status of the planet. But you can train yourself to simply be an instrument for the divine. It could be very simple ways. One of the little things I have a further blessing in addition to having the karma of being able to draw into a spiritual community early. I have a blessing of having a very saintly mother who, in the midst of all this, even though I was spending the week with her, every morning she gets up and she starts the day with her rosary, which takes about an hour. And every evening she ends it by reading about an hour from the Bible, and just this constant overflow. And so she was telling me, she likes to tell stories, and one of the things she was telling me about was it's a book she'd found, which I'm going to try to get for the high school. It's called 17-Second Miracles. And it's a description of all these things that young people, teenagers mainly, have found about how to just step in and make a difference in the ebb and flow of daily life. Not anything big, not doing a bunch of fundraising, but just being open to how can I help. And I thought that's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to encourage, not only in people who are new to trying to figure out life, but to people who have been on the path a long time. If we're awake, if we're really awake and alive and asking, what can we do moment to moment, we're going to see all kinds of things to do. We're going to see just somebody needs help with their luggage. Somebody else needs, you over here they're short on money. Somebody else, you hear that they're having physical problems, health problems, and you just start to turn your energy outward. Your energy becomes outwardly. You've got a strength inside, and that from that strength is pulsating this energy out through what places God puts you in. It's the opposite of most of our upbringing, which was to think of ourselves as the center, and we're starting to pull energy in, to fill up this hollowness inside of us. So it's twisting everything around 180 degrees. And of course we find that the more we live in that outwardly directed, becoming an instrument for the divine, the more satisfying life gets. The less that your problems bother you anymore, the less you even think about them. I remember a long time ago, I forget, Asha, I was standing next to Asha, and somebody came up. Asha's one of the ministers down in Palo Alto, Ananda. And somebody came up to her and just says, "How are you doing, Asha?" And her answer was, "Oh, I haven't had a chance to think about that lately." And I went away, and this is when I was new to the path, and I thought, what a great answer. What a great answer, just the fact that, yeah, I'm not constantly worried about my own issues, because, God, we could spend a whole lifetime worried about our own issues, right? We don't have this, this isn't working, that's not working. And we could go on and just make it our mantra for life. Why not just get out of that? Why not just stop looking at that and say, God can take care of me. I'm just going to be looking for ways that he can help others through me and by reaching out. It would make our lives incredibly different if we did that and as we do it. So we want to cultivate. We want to cultivate this I don't know, you call it fifth dimension or something to life. We want to get away from the thinking that we just have these five senses. So I guess it's the sixth sense, you could say, or seventh sense, whatever. And I was thinking there's a couple little images from the autobiography that kind of fit this. When Master was just a little boy, all of you probably heard the story, that his mother was a devotee of Lahiri. And so they had a picture of Lahiri in his room. And he said, when I started, I related to that picture as simply a picture. But he would pray to it with devotion, and he would try to, honor that. But he said, the farther I went, the more I realized that picture was not a picture. It was a living presence. It was a living presence which I could experience in my life. And that's exactly what we have to do. We have to do the same thing. From whatever place we're at, we have to go from the level of attunement we have, thinking of, the people, pictures on the altar, or the teachings, or just anything that's external to us, and we have to cultivate that until that becomes a throbbing, high-energy presence that we can just carry with us in every aspect of our life. Thank you.